Good afternoon. My name is Sarah Fossiltz. I serve as the board administrator for the Texas State Board of Examiners of Marriage and Family Therapists. Thank you for your patience this afternoon. I'll begin with a roll call of the board members. Dr. Merchant.
Here.
Dr. Barty.
Present.
Dr. Elder.
Present.
Mr. Francis.
Cheerfully present.
Mrs. Husband Thompson.
Here.
Mr. Parrish.
Here.
Reverend Dr. Skoma.
Present.
Ms. Smith.
Here.
Chaplain Stoglin.
Here.
Thank you. We have a quorum. Chair Merchant.
Oh, excellent. Well, then I call the meeting to order at 1:32 p.m. I do apologize to all those in attendance as well as those attending by Zoom for our tardiness. We just ran into some traffic issues and we ran into some technology issues. And so anyways, I do apologize for the tardiness of our meeting. Okay, so agenda item number 2 is approval of minutes from the January 27th board meeting.
Madam Chair, I approve the meeting minutes of January 27, 2023, pending any corrections.
Second. Okay, is there any further discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes, raise their hand. That is unanimous. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 3, a board review and possible action regarding appeals of applications for licensure denials. There were none. Likewise, item number 4, board review and possible action regarding agreed orders. I didn't see any of those in our packet either. Number 5, board review and possible actions regarding contested cases from the State Office of Administrative Hearings. Likewise, there are none of those. So let's move on to agenda item number 6, report of agreed orders executed by the council's executive director. Have y'all had a chance to review those? Is there any discussion? Okay, then we'll move on to agenda item number 7, report of cases dismissed by the council's executive director. I will say that the ethics committee did not meet, and so we did not have a chance to look over these cases. So is there any discussion about the cases that were dismissed? Yes, ma'am.
It's just a question. On item number 8, it says conditional precedent not met. I'm just curious what that means.
So in the rules in section 884.4, special requirements for complaints alleging violations related to court-ordered therapy or parenting facilitator services, there's a list of requirements before you can file a complaint or conditions that must be included with that complaint. And those rules were not adhered to when the complaint was received.
Thank you.
Is there any other further discussion of agenda item number 8?
I'd like to
I'm sorry, number 7.
apologize that they didn't meet. I know the transition to me to BHEC and all that, and I probably dropped it, or I don't know the transition. So
Yeah.
anyway, we'll get it back on track.
We will. Yeah, that was on me. Sarah emailed me and asked me about it, and it just slipped my mind. She even proposed a date and everything. It just slipped my mind to respond. So yes. Okay, so moving on then to agenda item number 8, status report of quarterly enforcement case activities. Is there any discussion about agenda item number 8? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to point out what a great job staff has done. When you look at from 2022 all the way to 2023, how much they have dropped. And then going into when we started out looking at our fiscal year 2015, all the way to 2021, almost everything has been cleared out almost. And so we don't have that lagging that Sunset was so intent upon. So I just wanted to compliment our BHEC staff and especially for Sarah and everybody that works with us. What a great job you guys are doing. Thank you so much.
Sure. Okay, any other comment or discussion about agenda item number 8? Moving on to agenda item number 9, report of compliance with agreed orders. Any discussion about agenda item number 9? Okay, and then we will move on to agenda item number 10, a report from the committee chairs. So agenda item number 8, report from the ethics committee chair. Again, we did not meet. I have actually appointed a new chair, which is going to be Dr. Jody Elder. And new members. And so Jody, I will just put it into your hands for you to call a meeting between now and the next board meeting for the ethics committee.
It's on my list of homework.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Agenda item number 10B, report from the Licensing Standards Committee. And the licensing standards did meet, we met twice, but I'm going to cover that when we get to agenda items number 11 and 12. So I'm going to hold off on that report for now. 10C, report from the Outreach Committee Chair. That is also me. We also did not meet as well, so I don't have a report. 10D, report from the Professional Development Committee Chair, Ms. Hesman Thompson. Did y'all meet?
We didn't meet, but Sarah, what is it that we worked on recently?
We updated the jurisprudence exam for the rules that were effective March 7th.
Okay, then we're moving on to 10E, report from the Rules Committee. Mr. Francis, did y'all committee meet?
No, ma'am, we did not.
Okay. Then let's move on to agenda item number 11. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Sorry. I did want to let you know, I had talked with this board about beginning to have something on our website which would designate, what's the difference between a license and versus a coaching
Yes.
that is not a license or has no supervision with it. And so I've been looking at what other states have done.
Oh, good.
And so I'll be able to have a more complex report for next time.
Perfect.
But this is a trend that we're starting to see across the United States where people are beginning to tackle executive coaching, lifestyle coaching, what kind of coaching is, and how it can sometimes be very detrimental to the public because there's no accountability if something goes wrong. So I think that we are right in with the trend that's happening, and I should have something for you guys to see based on what other states are doing for our next meeting.
Good, thank you. Do you want to meet as the outreach committee before this meeting to?
Yeah, yes, because I would
Yeah.
like someone to vet what I wrote.
Okay, yeah.
So it's not just me going, and here you go.
Well, and I want to contribute. I had a recent conversation with another professional and I was kind of inquiring, what are your perceptions of the difference between coaching and therapy, the work that we
Yeah.
licensed professionals do? And the response was there is no difference. It's just as a coach, you can't handle crisis situations.
What?
And so I think that is a common misperception.
I
So
do
thank you
too.
for your work
I do too.
and tackling that misperception.
Well, I think one of the other problems that we see is that sometimes we've seen it happen multiple times where somebody will lose their license, usually for something like sexual misconduct, and then they just relinquish their license and they go into coaching. And that's not, I don't think that's okay. Actually, while we're all here, do we just want to go ahead and set dates for our next meetings?
I think that would be
Yeah.
really helpful.
Okay. I guess let's,
Since everyone has a computer open. account.
exactly, yeah. I guess let's start with the outreach committee, which I did do some new committee assignments. So let me pull up the new committee assignments. Or Sarah, do you mind putting committee assignments on the screen? Look at you. So outreach committee, that is me, Daniel, Janine, and Jody. When would y'all, when do you think you would have that ready?
I think if we can do it toward the latter part of May, that will be plenty of time to gather everything that I've done the research on so far.
Okay. I am teaching a short course the week of May 22nd, so could we do the week of May 29th?
It'd be great.
Is the 29th Memorial Day
29th is
weekend?
Memorial Day weekend,
Yeah.
so maybe the 31st.
Yeah, that'd be fine. I am free all day on the 31st. Y'all prefer morning or afternoon?
Afternoon, like a 1 or 2 for me.
2 would be better for me.
Two to three?
Yeah, 2 to 3.
Um,
Thank you.
Okay, let's see here, the professional development committee, I don't know, you guys kind of just meet on an as needed basis, so I
We
think
do.
y'all need to meet. Jody, Dr. Elder, do you want to go ahead and put something? I just realized I misspelled your name on here.
Oh, I'm.
Every single
That's good,
time. I
yeah.
apologize. Do you want to go ahead and schedule something for the ethics committee?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I don't know, who, can you call out the names?
Yes, so the ethics committee is going to be Dr. Elder, Dr. Barty, Ms. Husband Thompson, myself, and then Reverend Dr. Stovall, you're our backup.
So for me, Mondays are the most open day. Would that work for anyone, Monday or a Thursday?
I'm actually not there.
Not, okay, what about Thursday, the 18th?
Of what month?
I'm looking at May. I could also do Friday, the 19th in the morning.
Nothing on the 18th, it is not on the calendar.
Oh, no problem, no problem. That's why
I'm
we're
out of
having this
town.
conversation now. Sure.
Oh, I think the 18th is where we've got some licensing, or we've got some ethics,
ICs.
yes.
Oh,
scheduled
that's
that
right,
day.
that's right. Okay. Oh, that'll be a
If
tough
Evelyn
week.
can't make either Monday or Thursday, and you want to jump back to Monday, and I could jump in on Monday. That's-
That'll never be available.
That you'll never, okay, well, I mean, Fridays are good too. What about Friday, the 19th?
I'm just out of town for 2 weeks.
Sure.
today, So.
Well, we could do Friday, the 19th. I'm also Friday, June 2nd. Let's all take a breath after your short course then. Are you in it, Lisa?
I am,
Yeah.
I'm available on June 2nd.
I can do June 2nd.
Okay, let's shoot for that. You don't want to do like a 9, knock it out? and move on
Is
to
that-
Monday?
does that
involve me?
No,
No, okay.
So June 2nd, 9 a.m.
oh, wait a minute, yes, it does.
That's involved.
Yes, it does involve you.
This is ethics?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't have any ethics. So
We've long known that. Why we never-
I'm just glad to be here.
we wanna-
I'm out of town on the second.
Oh, okay, all right. And our next meeting isn't until July. What about, the 16th?
Of
June? I can do June 16th.
So can I-
So can I?
All right, June 16th, 9 a.m. Gives me time to get materials together. figure out what we're doing.
So you won't need me that day. That's everybody else.
Correct.
So I'll be in Scotland.
That's.
For you.
For me.
I thought we'd go to Scotland.
Yes,
No
I
kidding.
think so.
Keeping the board
Here,
okay
here.
for that. Okay, licensing standards committee, I don't think, unless something comes up in this meeting, I don't think that we're going to need to meet. I do think, based on some of our conversations today, the rules committee will most likely need to meet. The rules committee, Russ, you chair that one, so that'll be Russ and Dr. Elder, I'm sorry, Dr. Barty, Dr. Elder, Ms. Husband Thompson, I'm sorry, I have your name spelled on here too.
No, it's, oh,
Down here at the bottom.
okay.
Anyways,
I know.
Ms. Husband Thompson, and then Mr. Francis.
If you would. The ethics committee is meeting on the 16th at 9, from 9 to 10.
Yes, sir.
Would the rules committee be open to meeting on the 16th from 10 to 11?
That's
So,
June
Are we
16th.
sure we're only an hour for rules?
Rules might be, I would say, I would book
Yeah.
2 hours. for
Yeah.
rules.
I can do 2 hours,
And you're.
10 to noon on
That's-
Friday, the 16th.
No, wait, if rules starts, I mean, ethics starts at 9, that'd be 9 to 11, so you would be.
Oh, y'all
Oh,
are
no,
doing
no,
2 hours?
no. Ethics, I
sorry.
think only be an hour.
Oh, okay.
I
So,
think so. I mean, I think we've done it an hour before.
Yeah, I don't think we were on.
okay, so we're talking ethics, I just want to make sure I'm on the same
But
page.
you do you.
June 16th.
You want a 3-hour meeting?
No,
I'm just gonna say, if we can consolidate that
Yeah, I
that would
think
work
that's a
fine
great
for me.
idea.
If we have ethics from 9 to 10, and then rules from 10 to 12 on June 16th, will that work?
Do you want to give a little buffer, maybe starting at 10:30 or
10:15,
just in case?
Sure.
10:15.
I mean, it's just us. We can do whatever we want,
I
whenever we
know.
want, however we want.
Exactly. Yeah, I think 10:15 to
10:30.
Or 10:30.
Just so that gives us a cushion.
That works. 10:30 to noon. Does that work?
Okay, fantastic. Okay, then let's see here. Next agenda item is discussion of possible action concerning recommendations for the March 9th Licensing Standards Committee meeting regarding exams used as a condition of licensure. So I don't know if y'all probably did not have a chance to read in your packet, but basically the social work AWSD released their data regarding their exams, and that revealed that there were some pretty ginormous disparities based on pass rates. Specifically, people who were people of color, older, was it just those two? Was it older and African American and males? And men, yes. That people belonging to those categories had disparate pass rates compared to their white counterparts, their female, white, younger counterparts. And so that has just kind of raised the question of, you know, what is our pass rate for the AMFTRB exam? It's raised the question of, you know, are exams inherently biased? Like, just basically it's kind of raised a question for us on the board. And so we met to discuss just to discuss all this, and basically, and I'm gonna pull up my notes so I remember what all we decided or what all we talked about. Basically, in our meeting, we reviewed alternatives to the AMFTRB exam. At AMFTRB, at the conference, AMFTRB conference, they actually discussed exam alternatives, and so we looked at some of those. The options would basically be having no exam whatsoever. That basically people get a master's degree and then they do supervision, and then there is no exam. Another option is something called a portfolio, which is where you collect items over the course of getting clinical practice, and then you put together the portfolio, and then a human being has to kind of review that, or maybe your supervisor reviews it, but there's somebody who has to review it. And then there's oral exams, might be another option. Basically, though, all of these have been tried in Texas and have not been successful. Sunset actually, social work used to have a portfolio system as an alternative to the licensure exam. And the Sunset Commission actually told them to get rid of it because of, again, just because of some of the issues that it created. Psychology used to have an oral exam, and again, they just recently got rid of their oral exam, I think just in the last couple of years. Alternative exams create portability issues because although it might be recognized in the state of Texas, we try to go somewhere else. Alternative exams aren't generally recognized in other states. There's also no evidence that alternative exams are any less, any less biased than traditional exams. And essentially, kind of just one of the prevailing ideas is that perhaps the differences, the disparities in exam scores is based on existing disparities in the society and not necessarily due to the exam itself. I will say that the AMFTRB, when this came up at the meeting in September, they said that they review every single question for disparity. And if disparity arises, then they review it for bias, and then they will throw that question out if it, they'll throw the question out. So I will say, AMFTRB keeps private and keeps secret their pass rate. But at the board meeting, they did review them, and there is a slight discrepancy similar to the social work board, except that it's less than 10%. Less than 2 percentage points.
So different than
yeah.
what the social work board.
In the social work board, it's like a 40% difference. I mean, it's a huge difference. So,
Chair, not to interrupt you.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that anybody that's listening, that's out there, because we also discussed this at VHAC as well. And the consensus was, it's not so much sometimes that the exam is skewed, but what happens is that somebody doesn't have the economic means to take off and heavily study. And so because of that, that sets up failures.
right. Yeah.
And so it's looking at, the possibility of more time or heating it up or things like that might also be a feasible thing. So I just wanted people out there to understand that's what they meant by those economic disadvantages.
So basically, the bottom line is that the Licensing Standards Committee does not recommend that we take any action at this point in time to develop an alternative, an alternative to the licensing exam. Like we just at this point in time, we recommend that the board take any action. Any discussion of that? Questions, comments?
Madam Chair, I read the material.
Mhm.
I didn't read every word, but I read enough.
Yeah.
And recently, I've gone from one religious community to another,
Mhm.
and it took me 3.5 months, what it takes others 3.5 years. And I'm the first Black American to be ordained in that community. It is time consuming. $1,500 of personal funds went into for books, plus the 10 books that were gifted, plus exams, plus being sent to South Carolina because of who I am and what this historically meant, et cetera. I don't think I'm an exception. I think I was been blessed to be given the opportunity to do it. And I'm a guy from the projects. And so I think Board Member Smith was by underlining, it's not the brain power, it's not that your brain diminishes because you are a person of color taking an exam. I've taken so many. And with 4 degrees, including a doctorate in Navy War College, all of this. And now it just demonstrates with architects or computer people or psychologists, we have to take the time to do it and know when to study. I've even talked to my wife about it, who's been a nurse since 1982. She passed her nurse's exam as a BSN the first time. But you have to study, you have to know what materials to study. There are some law schools that break up the the bar exam by doing it through their law school, which means it's hard to get into their law school because they, during the course of their 3 years, actually administer the bar exam through different courses. So when you come out of law school, you not only have your doctorate of jurisprudence, but you also have your bar code and your bar exam already approved. So with that in mind, I think no action, I agree. Because that, I don't want people, I can't speak for other people who come on this board who are geniuses in their own way. I can't speak for them, but our brains are not diminished when the requirements that we had to meet then and now. So I think not taking action, I think they need to go back and see what schools these people are graduating from. Do the schools teach it? Do they prepare the students? Do they say, we recommend you take these courses so that you can prepare for the exams? I think if you do a chain of process in that regard to research what's going on and including time and economic, do they bring the examiners to those locations? Do they centralize it? I mean, I don't think it's brain power. I think it's effort. I think it's due diligence. We all know racism exists up in the 40 countries, and every country has its own racial issues. In Japan, if you were a darker Japanese, I'm not even tell, you were looked upon. If you're a lighter Japanese, you in China, I mean, you go to Africa. If you're from the Yoruba tribe versus a Igbo tribe, they don't always get along. I'll conclude by saying we need to be very careful. You know my statement, because we have to protect the citizens of the great state of Texas. And if we don't do that, then who will? And I do not agree at all with dropping an exam. We need to know who you are. If you are going to be an LMFT, and if you go to any university and you don't have an exam, I don't want you. Because there's no way to measure what you know and what you are doing. And your moral compass has to be in there.
Thank you. Any other further discussion? Yes.
For me, the thing that was noticeable was the pass rates by primary language. And I face this situation regularly at work, and where I believe that we need interlingual translation, because when you look at individuals, they're not necessarily practicing in the language that you're taking the test in. And so it doesn't make sense to me to have someone test in a language that they're not practicing. So, and I'll just make a language up. Well, I won't make a language up, but let's use Spanish, for example, right?
Yeah.
And so somebody's primarily a Spanish practitioner, and they're in a Spanish-based community or Spanish-based community. Why are we not translating the test into the language in which they're going to practice so that we can truly test for fluidity and understanding of that business versus testing to see how great someone's English skills are? That was the thing that just jumped out. Thank you, Chair.
Any other discussion, comments? Okay, then we will move on to agenda item number 12. Discussion and possible action regarding recommendations from the Licensing Standards Committee regarding the report from the Senate Special Committee to Protect All Texans. This report is sometimes also referred to as the Uvalde report because it was issued in the wake of that. So we, again, a licensing standards committee met and reviewed the report. And basically, we looked at recent changes. Let me just say, one of the recommendations of the report was that we figure out ways to facilitate licensure so that we can increase our workforce. And so we looked at two different things. We looked at changes that we've already made to hasten licensure. We also looked at ways to maybe rule changes that could potentially happen in order to facilitate licensure. So some of the things that we have already done, is we have definitely streamlined the licensure process. We've made it a lot easier to sign up to take the exam. We created the 5-year associate. We've made it so that doctoral students can count hours towards licensure. We recently proposed the temporary license. We added a definition of relational hours to make it a little bit more clear about what those mean. We've reduced the number of years that someone must be licensed in another jurisdiction. It used to be 5 years, now it's 2 years. And so those are some of the things we've already done. And then we looked at, I've got to find my note here.
We also lowered associate CEU hours.
Yes, yes. And then some of the things that we proposed, that we looked at, just not that we proposed, but ideas, things to consider, and this is where the rules committee might come in. Well, some of it. We did talk about maybe reducing or eliminating the need for indirect hours, but we cannot do that without a statute change, so we require a statute change. We talked about allowing LMFT associates to still be able to count hours from their graduate programs, but again, we can't make that change without a statute change. We talked about increasing the number of supervisees that a supervisor is allowed to have. So currently, a supervisor is limited to only having 12 supervisees, and so we could maybe either increase that number or eliminate the limitation altogether. Might be an option. We talked about maybe increasing the telehealth hours to 750. Right now, they can only get 500 hours via telehealth, so we could increase that to 750. And then we also talked about maybe reducing the number of years required. So like I said, right now it's at 2. If you're licensed in another jurisdiction for 2 years, then you don't have to meet our academic and experience requirements. We just accept your license, and we could reduce that to 1. So those are some of the ideas that maybe are there any that I'm forgetting? I think that's, anyways. Those are just some of the ideas that we threw out. So I'm just going to throw it out to you guys now. Are there any of those ideas that sound appealing to you or not appealing to you? Is there anything, any of these that we want the rules committee to take up?
We also, just briefly, we talked about omitting the number of supervision hours. Instead of requiring 200, just weekly supervision is required as long as you're an associate, but you don't have to meet that 200 hours.
And there would also be a statute
Statute
change.
Right, so any discussion, questions, comments, thoughts? Do you want me to run through that list of things we actually have power over again? Mr. Francis?
We have power over the number of supervisees or supervisors, right?
Correct.
And so I think in areas, obviously, that we've talked about in the past, like West Texas or most served areas, I mean, as long as there's no harm to that supervisor in terms of their performance, I'm very supportive of something like that.
Have we heard back from any of the stakeholders on these seem like very professional level? Are they concerned with these things or in favor of these things?
We haven't had a chance to talk to stakeholders about them. One of the other ideas that we talked about in the licensing standards committee was to hold a town hall. Probably, so some of these things are actually being are being possibly addressed by the legislature right now. And so we had basically proposed maybe waiting until after the legislature session is over, so that way we kind of have we just know what we have to even work with. And then maybe sometime in like July or August, having a town hall where we could go to our constituents and say, what do y'all, this is what's coming from the ledge. These are some of the ideas that maybe we have. What do y'all think? And just see if we could get some feedback that way.
Sounds fantastic. When, for teachers, when's too late for that? When do you start getting into back to school stuff so that August would be, I can't do a town hall?
I
Is
could
there,
do it in July or August. If not, I could do this. I could actually July or September, maybe. I don't know. But anytime. I mean, really, honestly, doing a town hall is easy peasy. It just takes some hours,
Yeah.
time. It's,
We're good. We're good at what we do. So we
I'd like to be a part of it.
My only, Madam Chair, is we've got to make certain, here we go, that we just don't have these people coming from another state who we don't know how they double count. We as a board have heard you talk about this several times. We still don't know how they do this. I don't want the citizens of the great state of Texas to be harmed by these people because oops is not going to do it. And just letting them arbitrarily come here and give you a demographic. In the state of Florida, they are experiencing 10,000 people a month in moving. In Tarrant County, we are experiencing about 5,000 in the US per month. Where are they coming from? I have just, let me be frank. I have seen more California plates in 18 months than I have in 18 years. What are they bringing? What are they doing? How will we impact? What is happening to our society versus one of the other? Do they expect the same standards or no standards that they left behind, saying they didn't want them, but they bring them here and saying, we don't want these things. So I'm very concerned. And as I go off this board, I'm very concerned about that. And I don't think we should have an open door. Everything is not always good. And some people, some mental skies have to be looked at. And they try to get in our profession, and what is happening. We have evidence of that by the staff telling us every time we meet about misconduct issues and all of that. So we don't have where these folks come from the state, but that's my major, that's one of my major concerns.
I think it's important to consider, who's coming to our state. I think it's also though important to consider that Texas is in the middle of a mental health crisis.
Yes.
And so to me, that's why like reducing it to a year, that gives, if there are any discrepancies between one state and another, I just feel like that extra year of practice will probably take care of any of those discrepancies between our rules and theirs, hopefully. I don't know. Anyways, but no, I agree that we need to be careful and make sure that standards are held high. But at the same time, I think we need to make it easier for people to come here and practice in order to meet the needs of our population.
I would agree with that because it also sets us up for reciprocity, right? For our licensees to also practice out of state, because so many people, because of what we've just been through the last 3 years, we've all had lots of clients that went to their second home. Maybe their second home is in New Mexico, or maybe their second home is in Colorado or California, wherever. And right now, we don't have the ability to continue care. We have to find a brand new person. And so having reciprocity, I think is critical. And maybe what would help set people's minds at ease with people coming in with their license is to have a breakdown. This is super easy to get, a breakdown of what does each state requirement have? Because frankly, California actually has higher training for their MFT program than we do. So they are kind of a gold standard for MFT for California. Don't let your mind
We'll have to
go
talk,
there.
we'll have to talk offline.
Unconscious bias.
Oh, no, we'll have to talk offline. We have had the double count discussions, believe me, the double count, double credits. Oh my
We're
God.
we're not necessarily talking quality
Yeah.
as
I'm
opposed
just
to
saying,
quantity.
right, but it might be helpful for people to know, okay, in Texas, you got 3,000 hours, and Arkansas, you have 2,700, and Vermont, you have 32, to kind of see what the requirements are. And I'm happy to look that up.
I think you, Madam Chair, you have hit on that, Board Member Smith, because that's tremendous. Although I disagree about the higher standard training, but the other is track record. Madam Chair, just like we in the middle, we as a board, we have voted on 3 hours of crisis management training. Not that we are crisis management experts, but it demonstrates that we are not just there for the cameras, because we all know after the shooting and all of the publicity and all of that, as soon as those cameras were gone, those counselors, like what happened? Where are they? And that's when the community really needs. It's like a funeral. Everybody is concerned about the funeral during the week, but the 2 weeks after, there's nobody there. And so this is what we have to be careful about. And I think by doing that, Ms. Smith, we can pull that up. And then we can show to our chair and other board members These are the track records. These in terms of their expectations and requirements from other states.
It also, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It also brings me reassurance that
Yes.
they have been practicing, they've been supervised for their entire postgraduate supervised experience requirement. Plus, they fully licensed, they've been practicing for a year, and they have to be in good standing before we would let them practice here. So for me, they've had intense supervision, they've not had an ethical complaint. I really don't see a problem. Sure, let's provide the service.
So I guess my question, because actually this, reducing it to 1 year, there are several bills moving forward that would actually eliminate the need even for this conversation. So I guess my question to the rules committee, really, there's only 2 rules that we proposed that we actually probably should address before the legislature ends. And that would be increasing telehealth hours to 750 and either increasing the number of supervisees a supervisor is allowed to have, or eliminating it altogether. So does the rules committee want to take up those 2 issues between now and the next meeting, or do y'all just want to wait to meet and do you just want to take it up after the legislature finishes?
The rules committee will meet in June, which is after the legislature finishes.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Right? So
Yeah.
we would be able to meet at that time to address that.
Okay. Well, then never mind. Okay, perfect. Then I'm just gonna,
Yeah, and 2 things.
Yeah.
You can send that list to me.
I
So
will.
like, okay, good. The other thing is, as we're talking about people from out of state and maybe removing the 12 supervisee cap and things, I really am impressed with the reduced number of complaints that our license has by licensees. And I think that's because of some good supervision, some good education and focus on that. I don't know if we need to address any kind of more structured supervision, training perspectives as we're bringing in other people from other states. And as we're expanding the load, potentially expanding the load on supervisors to ensure that they don't let things slip through the crack just because they're a little bit overloaded or overwhelmed or whatever it is. So I don't want to lose the momentum that we have and damage, cause any damage to the success that we've already made with that. And so I'm wondering in the area of supervisor training, if that's something that we might need to take a look at and see if there's some things we can bolster in that regard.
I really like that idea.
How would supervisor training differ? If indeed we took the action, the rules committee says, yes, let's remove the cap, the max, and supervisors can have as many supervisors as they want. How would that supervision training look differently than what is already in place?
To be a supervisor, you go through the course and you get the hours and you're a supervisor.
Right.
Okay, for me, that was decades ago. That was a long time ago. Now, do I do the CEs? Yes. Are the supervision CEs good? Yes. Are they standardized? I don't think so. And so I'm wondering if there could be a standardization of the CE requirements for supervisors or something along those lines to ensure that that the areas are covered for their renewal period are covered that would incorporate out-of-state people coming in, working across state lines possibly, because I don't know if the supervision, if we move toward crossing state lines, as that starts to move, will that also incorporate supervision? I haven't even heard that discussion. That just popped in my head. Can we supervise people across, if we can do counseling across state lines and reciprocities with licenses, does that mean we can supervise across state lines too? Wow, where'd that come from?
I know that our rule does address that briefly, but I have to go back and look.
Okay.
So, anyway, so are you saying that what you would want would be like, so kind of how we have for CUs for just a licensee, you have to get so many hours of this and so many hours of this, so many hours of this.
Right.
Are you saying something similar for supervisors where the 6 hours they have to get, 3 has to be in this or 3 has to be in that, or?
Yes, or there is an approved supervisor CE course.
We have that, right? We have, this is what must be included in the 40-hour training.
Yes, and hopefully, knock on wood, that's not wood, but that is being covered. I just want to ensure that we don't get too overloaded with all these moving parts that are about to start happening, that we lose track of that. Because I think the supervision component of what we do is really, really rich and required.
I think it's good to look back, because probably for all of us that supervise students, it has been a while since we took the course. And maybe as a board, looking at what's already included in the course, what do they study? I'm looking at it as, when I look at people who have had a license violation, and I know that some of them are also supervisors. And I'm thinking, how did that fall out of your brain that this needed to occur? I don't want that to happen to them, but I also want to make sure that their supervisees also don't get in trouble for something. So I don't think it would be a bad thing to go back through and look at what's supposed to be in our supervisor training course. I know that LPCs do that on a regular basis. So I don't think that's a bad idea.
Yeah, and I've looked at a couple of 2 or 3, not many, but just 2 or 3 anecdotally, supervision training courses, the 40-hour courses. And they do cover similar constructs, but they all do it really differently.
Well, it's cool, because, we just recently passed where we actually we actually delineated what's supposed to be in that course. So it's possible that now that we have the rule, that you'll see changes in what people are actually putting in that course, now that we have a rule to address it. Does that make sense?
Good. And anything we can do to
Yeah.
just keep the focus.
Okay.
I don't want to lose focus.
Yeah.
And I'm just fearful
Yeah.
that we might.
Looking at the overall picture,
Mhm.
when we talked in January, we were looking to kind of get ahead of this Senate Special Force.
Mhm.
Are we planning to make a report to them or some kind of, here's what we've done, or is there?
I remember correctly, BHEC asked for us to maybe just look at what we were already doing. So I assume that maybe at some point in time, BHEC might ask for something, in which case we give it to them. But I think it's just good for us in case we are asked the question, we
Right.
already have an answer ready.
But there's not a next step in this to be.
No, there's not, yeah.
Okay.
Well, and when the LSC met, we kind of determined we're doing a lot of
Exactly.
what's already been recommended in the report.
Right.
All of those wheels.
But
have
letting
already
them
been
know
put in
that
motion.
might be a
Right.
helpful thing.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what we do, is we will make sure that we have knows that.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
in the tele hours, I think we really need to focus a lot on that for 3 primary reasons. One, to increase areas that are underserved, it allows us to expand to those areas.
Mhm.
2, I think we need to be very conscious of matching the general trends in the workforce, which is people working more remotely.
Right.
And then the third reason that really comes to mind is that we don't want that to become a detriment for individuals to enter into the profession when they see they can go into other professions and not have to go into the office as much. And they think, oh, why wouldn't I take that path? So I think there are multiple factors that are going to come into play with that. And it's just the way everything is moving right now. And it's here to stay. You know, people thought, oh, it's just a temporary thing. But as we see so many companies having people come back, and we're seeing people quit at rates of over 16% of a company just because of they're being forced to go back into an office. We don't want those things to happen to our professional. So I think that's something we really need to focus on and think about what can we extend that to. Well, as the good Captain Stockman would say, well, protecting the great citizens of the state of Texas, but at the same time, helping our profession. So.
We also, BHEC, want to make sure that these things are standardized so that we're not in a position where these guys over here looking at what field to choose and they go, well, LPC, I can stay at home. MFT, I gotta, we need to have, I think you're right, standardized.
Well, and from a practitioner perspective, I will say that, and an educator perspective, it's interesting to hear students entering an in-person graduate program who spent the last 2 years of their undergrad online. They experience significant anxiety and express significant anxiety about being back in person. And what is it like to be like in a room with a professor and other students? And my concern as a practitioner is I want a licensee who can do both.
Right.
I am
Agreed.
not in favor of removing the maximum on the telehealth, because I think we learned so much more being in person, feeling the vibe, and I would not ever be in favor of removing that requirement.
I mean, this right here is so much better.
Oh my
Yes,
God.
I know.
What we've been
Times
doing for the
better.
last 3
Right.
years,
Yeah.
just seeing your faces.
Exactly.
The other is, Madam Chair, is that BHEC, I've said this a few times in our previous board meetings. Texas is not known as a bellwether state. You hear other states that they're a bellwether state for this, a bellwether state for that. But in this case, the great state of Texas is the bellwether of BHEC, because we're no longer social workers here, psychologists there, LPCs there, LMFTs. We're now sitting through our representatives together to say, let's work out a comprehensive plan for the citizens of the great state of Texas, for the Uvalde issue, for other situations that go on in the county. We've had 140 mass shootings this year. And so, and by the way, one of the families that compounds the tragedy in the Nashville shooting is that one of the 9-year-old children was killed. Father was the Presbyterian minister who had just moved to Nashville, Tennessee from Dallas, Texas. That compounds this issue. And so that has to be in person. To Dr. Coleman's point, that has to be in person. Tragic as it is, but you've got to go to those people and listen, but you got to do it in person. You can't do it online. And I agree with you, Dr. Elton. You've got to be able to do both. You've got to be able to do that. And you have to do more listening than talking in those situations. So it just compounds the problem that they just moved. I don't even know if they were there 3 months from Dallas, Texas to Nashville, Tennessee. And the 9-year-old child of the pastor is born.
Think what best serves the client. If you're in rural Texas, can't get there, that's what we have to do. But if you can be face to face.
But I like George's point, let's keep up with the trends, while still providing good services.
And we can do both. This state can do both through the training and the expectations and the requirements. You put out the requirements, you don't lower the requirements. You tell people, make sure they understand the standards in their language, primary language, secondary language, whatever has to happen. As long as the standards are not lowered, we can do this.
Any further discussion? Okay, then we'll just ask the Rules Committee to take this out at their meeting in June.
Perfect.
Okay, agenda item number 13, discussion on possible action concerning March 1st, 2023 regulatory transparency project virtual event, the implications of the FTC's proposed ban on non-complete agreements. Sarah, do you mind summarizing this for us since you attended it? I guess I should look this way.
I attended it.
Oh,
Just-
you attended it. Okay.
Attorney Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah. I didn't want to steal your thunder, Sarah. Did you have something you want to add to it? No?
You would be the expert.
There's not a lot to really go over on it, but I guess the quick update is there's currently a proposed rule, FTC rule, and it's actually open for public comment till April 19th. So if you want to, you could go on the FTC's website, take a look at the rule and submit public comment. But they do have a proposed rule out there that would ban all non-compete agreements from employers and their workers, and they would also void any existing ones. But it's whether or not they'll adopt it or not, I don't know. As it's proposed, it would be effective from 180 days from when they've proposed it. But as the discussion was at that virtual meeting, it is ripe for litigation. So if they do adopt it, I imagine there will be a lot of litigation on this particular subject. And so whether or not it stands is another question. But a couple other interesting things that came up were so as this relates to marriage and family therapy, if there are supervisors that have their supervisees on non-compete agreements, this would potentially void those. But interestingly enough, FTC rules don't necessarily apply to all areas. So there will be certain industries that aren't regulated by the FTC, like there's a Securities and Exchange Commission that would be for financial sectors, or there would be airlines. The FAA regulates those. And so this FTC rule wouldn't necessarily touch every single marketplace in the nation, but it would cover most. It would cover a lot. So, but one of the other issues people brought up was, I'm not an expert in California law, but they did bring up that non-competes are illegal in California, but they are routinely used in California. So just because it wasn't made illegal, people still do it. It's just, when they go to court to enforce it, that's a whole nother issue. So that was another issue that people brought up, saying, well, they may pass this rule, but who's going to follow it, and how are they going to enforce it for hundreds of millions of different people? So it's an interesting thought. I don't know how that'll work, but anyways, it's not adopted. It's just proposed. It hasn't happened. So there's not much you can do other than speculate about it right now.
I did notice that there is a bill that's been proposed, it's maybe possibly working its way through the legislature, regarding non-compete covenants, is what they call them. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that. And I was just gonna say, if you did, I was just wondering if you had any thoughts on it.
In the Texas legislature, no, I haven't had a chance to look at that.
Okay. It seemed to be, basically, when I looked at it, it looked like it was just creating rules around it. So it doesn't disallow non-compete clauses. It says, like, these are the rules you have to follow if you're going to have one. So.
Patrick, I think that's Bill 5149. House bill.
Do you know if it gives a specific agency regulatory authority over non-competes? Is that what it says? I'll have to take a closer look at it.
I do not know the answer to that. But it's House Bill 5149.
It's just sitting in committee. It's not going anywhere right now.
Just out of curiosity, other than the example that Attorney Hyde gave, which is supervisors who might have their supervisees on a non-compete agreement, are there any other implications for the MFT world that we would need to consider if this is passed?
Well, if you have a practice and you hire just employees, I mean, I've seen practitioners use it not for supervisees, but just for their employees, make them sign non-competes.
I have two. I've had students who have gone on to work, who have gone on to basically work in agencies or wherever that their employers will make them sign a non-compete clause. So.
How executable is that? How
No.
strong? Yeah.
You have to find out. It's usually have to come, because in our profession, it's very common to sign a non-compete. Moving from firm to firm, protect trade secrets. We have a non-compete when new hires come to our firm. But you have to be sure. It's just, I have to find the project 72 years later, found out that we did it. So it's usually well after the fact. So the same thing with non-compete, it'll probably be well after the fact that you'll find out. So it's kind of hard to enforce.
They used to be, George, they used to be highly disfavored under Texas law, because I've sued under them several times back when I was in private practice. But I have noticed that there has been kind of a trending. They are not as highly disfavored as they once were. It seems like now that law seems to be changing, but I would say right now, as a general rule, they're still highly disfavored unless you get into those very unique tech sector type stuff where there's a lot of trade secret applications there. They're probably going to be a lot more stout.
Thank you for the education. I appreciate it.
Hey, is there any other further
Chair.
discussion?
Attorney Hyde.
Oh, yes, sir.
I just looked real quickly at that bill, and it looks like it doesn't make non-competes illegal, but it restricts them. And so it basically says if you're going to have them, they have to abide by certain things, like allowing access to client records and patient records and things like that. So that was all I had.
Could we ask Attorney Hyde to move his head to the left slightly to not block the sacred tower? Thank you. That's-
Okay, any other discussion on item number 13?
It's a great.
Okay, let's then move on to agenda item number 14, discussion of possible action regarding the jurisprudence exam. So 14A, discussion regarding the quarterly summary report. There were also some changes suggested on that report. I would say that I agree with the change on note 3 to remove the double negative. That makes sense to me. Or did y'all already make that change? Is that what y'all discussed in the licensing standards committee or? Okay. Anyways, I agreed with that idea of removing that double negative. Also, I'm curious, do we know on average how long it takes people to take the exam? Like, is that an hour-long exam or a 2-hour-long exam? Like, do we know?
I've asked this of the vendor.
Oh, the jurisprudence, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, for some people, it is
Some of
4
us
hours.
take
I mean,
long, no, I'm sorry.
I would say
Blank
max
out.
of an hour.
This fast also has.
I've asked the vendor this in the past, and they said they don't track when someone starts and when they stop, so they don't have data on an average or median or minimum or maximum time.
Okay. I just noticed that people were complaining in the comments about how long it took, so it made me wonder how long it.
And I
Maybe
think
the
that-
expectation level, if we're saying the estimate, that's what one says, the 1 hour estimate was very low. So maybe our expectation level should.
Yeah, I think they're looking at the CE credit,
Mhm.
that if it takes longer than an hour, then I want to get more than an hour's credit.
Right. Especially
But
when
if it
they
takes
pay
longer
$40
than an
for it.
hour, it makes sense.
That's the thing. I think an hour is kind of the average. There may be outliers who do it fast, much faster or much slower, but I would say that an hour is about average. And I think that's our safest bet as far as making sure we're offering a CE credit that reflects the majority of the time that it takes for people.
Remind me how many questions it is.
40.
That's what I was thinking, 40.
40 questions.
So
And it's a no fail.
Then it's not
Exactly.
fair. So if you get it wrong, you try again,
Yeah.
try again,
Yes.
try again,
Yeah.
yay,
Makes me
go to
wonder-
the next one.
It makes me wonder how familiar are they with the rules?
I know, yeah, exactly.
If they have to try again.
So basically $1 a question, somebody brought up price point,
Yeah.
just to ask on behalf of the public, do we know, are we in a good standing with our price point to other?
That's also with LPC, the JP is.
Okay, so that's a
So
standard.
we're on par.
How did we, I'm just curious, how did we set $39? Is that what it cost us or,
Yeah, it's a vendor cost.
okay, vendor cost, okay, cool.
You're not making any profit off of that.
I think $5. I think $5 of it goes into general revenue or appropriated receipts. But the rest of it goes to the vendor.
For the board's information, it's 65 questions on the exam. 65 are pulled from a larger pool.
Sarah's.
So it's even less than.
That's right. It's a bargain.
I appreciate the feedback, but I'm not in favor of making changes to the amount of CEs that we offer or the cost.
Any other discussion about agenda items 14A or 14B? Okay. Then let's move on to agenda item number 15, that is report from the board chair just about a myriad of things. So let's see here, thing number 1. I did present at the TMFT conference, and it was good. I was the very last presenter on the very last day, and so the pickings were slim. There were not many people attended, but anyway, I felt really good about the people who did. Anyway, so yeah, that went really well. We also did the new committee appointments. I did that, and we have shared those with y'all. Any questions, comments, concerns with that? Okay, cool. We do need to discuss, well, first, y'all got an email from Sarah about this, that BHEC recently went down to 3 meetings a year. And so just as board chair, I followed suit. We just kind of made that executive decision. I hope that's okay with everybody. You want to discuss it? We can discuss it.
Yeah, I had some concerns with it, having been there for the discussion in BHEC. I think it makes sense for that dynamic, but honestly, and I know I'm new at it, I think we have more work to do than BHEC does.
Okay.
And unless there was, because I specifically asked Daryl at that meeting, was this something they were wanting to, trickle down? And he said, no.
Oh, well, they said yes.
Well, I had no in my notes.
Well, let's ask Daryl.
Let's ask
He's
Daryl.
here.
Originally, what I wanted was the board, all the member boards to do the 3 and BHEC to stay at 4. But in all honesty, I kind of figured we would have to show you that it could be done first before you would even begin to entertain that change. And so that's why we started up at the council level.
I have concerns moving it from 4 to 3 in that when we do need to accomplish something, we've now just increased the time by 33% between when somebody puts in a submission to us to when we can tackle it. And that's if we can tackle it on the first time that they submit it to us. Second, we all have a responsibility. I hesitate to say this. We all have a responsibility to individuals to make sure that things run appropriately and properly. And
You
I
mean
think
for the great state of Texas?
Wrong.
Yeah,
Don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed.
Okay, see, we couldn't have this banter.
That's right.
I know.
That's
Yeah.
right.
So
We'd be talking over each other.
Speak.
But I don't think that 4 puts this burden on this board or on our budget or finances. I think we do a disservice to the citizens by moving it to 3, both in their ability to respond to us when they so desire to, because they are our customers, and when we have to take actions. It's just, that's a great time for things to go through for a group of individuals that interact. The purpose of our group is for our practitioners to interact with other people and make sure that it's done in a safe and proper way. It doesn't, and I know this is weird for me, but it's only because of all you find individuals, it doesn't feel right. I don't have data to point to it.
Now, what percent?
I know, I don't have data, but it doesn't feel right to me. So that would be my comment, Madam Chair.
We do Russ and then Dr. Elder.
I'm for 4.
You're
And,
before.
and it kind of tags along with some of the earlier comments we made about there's some significant movements going on. And I think, and I think us staying on top of it in a more regular, timely way would be good. So I'm for 4.
Dr. Elder.
Ditto for all the same reasons.
And I know we've been moving in the last couple of years pretty quickly, but there have been some meetings that have been, 9-hour meetings. And we get into rules, we get into these things. Good Lord, is that going to be a 2-day meeting if we're only doing it 3 times a year? Yeah. I think we're better served. I don't feel pressed by the 4 times a year, and I'm not looking for more to do. But I don't feel like the 4 time is a burden
It's not obvious.
on us. No.
Okay, then, Sarah, by the consensus of my board, let's recalculate our schedule and put us back to 4 board meetings for the upcoming year.
Sorry.
I'll look into it, send you an email after the meeting.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Though, Madam Chair, I would tell you, I greatly appreciate your bias for action and your ownership
Yes.
in taking that. So please,
Yes.
No.
please continue doing what you do. You do it exceptionally well.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you.
We have a good report here. I feel like we can
Yeah.
all say,
Yes, we
yeah,
can. Yeah.
and say it.
But speaking of that, I do believe that our next board meeting will still be in July. And so Dr. Barty, you and I had, would you like for Texas Wesleyan to host? Are you willing to let Texas Wesleyan host in July, or would you rather do October?
On behalf of Texas Wesleyan University, where I teach, we would love to host on July 21st, beginning at 1 p.m., following a similar structure here to allow people to travel and trying to keep it within that timeframe.
Yes, sir.
And I will let everybody know when, where, how, and all that kind of stuff.
Perfect. Okay. Let's see here. Next, one of the things that also came up, I don't know if y'all got the email or not. It might just have been me as board chair and Sarah as the board liaison or the board. I forgot your title, Sarah. Board administrator. Thank you. Thank you, Chaplain Sullivan. But AMFTRB is looking for people to serve on a focus group about post-graduation supervision requirements. I do think I would like for Texas to be a part of that focus group. I'm happy to serve on it, but I also wanted to see if there's anybody else who is maybe interested in serving on that focus group.
I have
glad.
a question about supervision. I think it was
I'll be glad.
Ask and you shall receive.
But,
I
I
know,
mean, if we need one, then it's fine.
I know, Dr. Elder, you'd also expressed some interest.
Okay, at the end of the meeting, arm wrestling?
I like it. Yeah, let's do it.
So take you down.
Not have three, so
I can ask her.
I think we should ask if we can have three, because that just provides a diversity of ideas and thoughts and experiences. Not, you three are not alike.
Because we are from,
The great state of
Oh my
Texas.
gosh.
thank you.
You can clap, you can clap. Let's have our applause.
Don't keep the psyche environment.
You are enhancing the reality of where we are.
Okay, well, then I will ask Lois if the three of us can serve on it, or at least two, you know,
Yeah,
ask the two if y'all want to. Anyways, we'll go forward.
I'm
That's
happy to
fine.
yield.
That's fine. You know, I'll flip a coin. I'd be glad to, but
I think Mr. Francis' idea is good. I think
I'm
what he
not,
wants-
I'm not lobbying for it. I would just feel.
Good deal.
We're promoting the answer.
Okay, the next thing is, okay, has everybody signed all the cards? Has it- okay. Put this in here. Okay, so this, we don't know, okay, so we don't know when the appointments is going to happen, but this could potentially be Chaplain Stogland and Mr. Francis's last board meeting. I hope not, because I'm gonna miss you both.
Yeah.
So,
Now that I just met you, like face
I
to
know.
face.
Anyway, so we as the board, we got together and we got y'all some gifts. And so, I'm just gonna give them to y'all right now.
Sure.
Here's Chaplain Stogland.
Thank you very much. Very much. I appreciate it.
Card.
Thank you. Spell chaplain correctly. Thank you.
Oh, my God.
Double check. I don't
Yes.
know. That's how much more. Did you get that right?
Yes, yes, yes. Dr. Mercer didn't hug these, or she hugged them when she first came and you were not. So I don't want you to be aware.
No, I've already approached, I've already had one emotional proof today, which is almost one more than I do for 6 months, so. Yeah, I'll break.
Y'all gonna open your present?
Oh, I didn't know that was protocol. I
Is that
apologize.
okay? Can we make them open the
No
present?
bag is bigger than mine, so that's okay. I'm not comparing. I'm not comparing. What we got here? What we got here? Oh, that's not.
I know.
Turn it around, turn it around.
Yes, sir. Hey, the great state of Texas, y'all. That is absolutely incredible. Yes, thank you. I love it. Thank you. I will wear it with much pride. Yes. Yes.
They actually have two things in there. Make sure you see them both.
Okay, all right.
Let me see this.
Let's see. Fancy Texas rap. All right. Texas chewy pecan pralines.
Uh-huh.
Oh.
You made an enemy of my wife and trying to keep me under $2 a month. I'm trying to
Put
stay
your
at
shirt on, put your
250.
shirt on. Yeah,
Oh,
I'll-
wow. More sweetness.
Oh, man.
Clearly, people are thinking that I need to be more sugar.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Oh, look at this. Thank you, folks.
See, this way when you travel, you can take a little bit of Texas with you.
Oh,
So,
oh,
anyways, the
trust
other thing
me.
is in the
Especially
bag,
travel.
In the
in the
bag.
bag.
In the
That
bag.
Russ is.
Right.
This
This
bag,
is
this
heavy.
bag.
Oh,
Yes, this bag. You looked a little bit, you look a lot.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
All right, he knows how to do all that.
Mirror free, look at that.
I know.
You're incredible, man. I mean.
that's. Let's, we have some of the appropriate wings.
Uh-oh.
Just gotta mesh it. Take it.
Now,
I think you need to face the camera.
I'm going to
People that
school
don't
right
know how to
now.
tie it.
I do not know how to tie it.
Well, I've never done this with my coat on. I just feel inappropriate taking my coat off in the meeting, so.
You can take it off. Take it off. We're good.
Without a.
This is why I don't eat sweetness, to make sure I can get my neck fastened properly.
I'd like the attorneys present to understand when the ladies say, take it off, they were referring to the jacket.
Just for clarification.
Appropriate context. We don't want
Attorney
any,
Hyde, we
we
just
don't
want
want
you to
any
be aware.
harassment here.
Sarah,
Kill the camera, kill the camera.
Quick. It's an unusual board meeting. Huh? Okay, all right.
I know.
No, that's gonna be it.
Let me see.
We're like your
You
students, we
can't
don't know how to
see
handle.
it from this point on where I am in the.
Well, let's take a look. It looks good. I mean.
You want to stand up for us,
You
sir,
got-
Mr.
You got the red
Chairman?
one.
I think you look tremendous.
There you go.
Yes,
I feel here without having a mirror to reflect in.
Okay, there you go.
See, but the part is, I did it backwards. I didn't recognize the star
Oh, I
was
see.
there,
Yes.
and the star should be the other way, so I would
We give
redo
you
it.
grace.
Yep, it's beautiful. I will wear it with pride.
Yes, you should.
Thank you so very
It
much.
goes with the whole, I mean,
It
good
does,
housekeeping.
it does.
Thank you.
It's
sincerely.
magical today.
And to my first BHEC meeting, I kept my promise and wore a bow tie, and it was noticed.
I need you to
So
keep
it
that
was-
up.
I don't know if that's continuous, but that was for the
Thank
first.
you.
Well, that's great.
Attorney, Darrell is standing, looking very stoic.
He's thinking, okay, that added 20 minutes to this meeting.
Yeah.
And the dollar cost per minute of this meeting happening in another city. I know what he's thinking, because I would think that.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm not paying you by the hour. Y'all can take as long as you want to.
Mileage is minimal.
Okay, well, that's it. I don't have anything else for my board chair report. So let's move on to agenda item number 16. Report from the board's delegates to BHEC. So I will, who wants to take that?
I'm happy to
Please
take it.
do,
and then,
yeah.
So we did have, for BHEC, we did receive an audit report from the state auditor's office. They have a couple of objectives that they want to do. They want to determine if BHEC has enough process and related controls for compliance within our licensing activities, investigations, resolving complaints, and making disciplinary information available to the public to remain transparent. Additionally, they'll also look at our automated systems that we have in place and the process. They're looking at this audit from April until August. So the release for the audit will be August 2023. We'll be happy to bring you what they found out. The workforce study, and those of you that are in present or online, if you haven't gone online to BHEC yet to participate in the workforce study, I encourage you to do that because it continues to update. It's a live study. And we made that available to the public to get some data on who's in our workforce, how many people, what are the ages, where do they work, things like that. And we'll continue to monitor that and update until December 31st at midnight, or 11:59 to be exact, December 31st, 2023. So if you haven't participated by going online and doing it, please do so. You can only do it once a year, but this will be a rolling thing to continue to give us good data. There's also a new webpage for the public that you can review and make comments about any rulemaking process. So when you go to BHEC and then you go to the proposed rule changes, you can look right here. You can view what they are via the Texas Register, and you can also click what you want. So I don't know if they can see it or if you want to pull it up, but there's some rules that we're looking at, and then you can submit your own public comment right there. So you don't have to be present online when we are having a BHEC meeting. You can go ahead and give your comments, better or worse, whatever you like. Currently, we as MFTs don't have any proposed rule changes to actually look at and vote on. And then our fiscal year 23, we also did a performance evaluation for our executive director of BHEC. It was completed. It's a blind evaluation, but I can tell you he always scores very highly because of all the work that our executive director does. And finally, We did decide to go to a 3 times a year, beginning in 2024. And all of the dates, the agendas, the minutes, these are always posted on the VHAC website. And one of the reasons for doing that is because the member boards are doing so well. So I didn't want to give my 2 cents in how often. I still prefer the member boards, get ready. I prefer the member boards to still keep meeting at 4, because that's where most of the work is done. It goes up to VHAC, yay or nay, other things are happening, pay attention to trends, things like that, but the member boards do the work. And so that's why I would still recommend member boards to continue with 4 while VHAC is moved to 3. Yes?
And just, it's a testimony to the setup, the implementation, and the execution of the VHEC board of why they can move from 4 to 3.
100%.
I mean, it's the work that you started and you did to get that thing working. It's the work that Daryl has done. And I think that's the appropriate thing. But I would support also that the member boards where things are truly happening,
Right.
close to our customers, close to the citizens, that should remain. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you for that, I appreciate that, George. And so finally, until the chaplain references come up, also would like to, the next time that VHEC meets will be May the 23rd. That's our next meeting. Did you have anything else you wanted to add?
All right. Sat quiet and listened, trying to learn my way around. And I will say that George Francis is highly respected on that board and will be missed.
Thank you. It's a training from this board that will allow me to do that.
I'll just say I had not seen the public comment page, and that is so easy.
It's so much easier now, isn't it?
Yes, you
I
just-
know.
Yeah, no,
If you
that is
haven't gone
fantastic.
online to do it, do it.
Yeah.
Trying to make it as
Yes.
easy and accessible and have staff be, and once again, I just cannot sing staff's praises at VHAC enough.
Yeah.
What everybody does down there, and it's not just getting a paycheck. They truly are vested in what they do and for the great state of Texas.
Yes, ma'am.
So once again, thank you to all of you who work for the VHAC board and our MFT board as well, and the others. Thank you very much.
Yes.
I'm wondering if anybody from who attended the VHEC meeting could speak to the CE broker information
I was
and
gonna-
how that's being considered.
I was going to mention that because there were a number of public comments
Mhm, mhm.
that seemed to express concern with the CE dynamic, the broker dynamic, and that did get mentioned a lot in the comments. So I was wondering if that's something we need to discuss at this level.
I don't, we'll have to take our cue from Daryl if he wants us to discuss it at this level, but right now I can tell you it's only in discussion. It's really
I think it's fair game if y'all want to talk about it.
awesome.
I think it's fair game.
Well, I'm curious, because I noticed that there were several bills about CEs or
Right.
CE providers. So is this something, like, why is the legislature getting involved in this discussion?
Well, I won't talk about all that in an open meeting.
That's one.
And that's why you're executive director.
Yeah,
That's
you
why
can call
we-
me individually if you want to talk about that, but
Okay.
this is something we had started. When we started doing the CE overhaul, I knew one of the things that we wanted to do was to allow for the carry forward of excess hours. And I knew when we did that, it was going to be much easier to handle that kind of calculation if we had some sort of automated tracking system. So I always knew I kind of wanted us to move towards some type of automated tracking system so that we didn't have to manually account for that, or so that the licensee didn't have to manually account for that. It works the way we're doing it. It's doable. It's just not as efficient as it could be. So in the back of my mind, I was always flirting with this idea. So we started looking at, or I started looking at CE Broker, and there's another company called CE Zoom. And then I think even eStrategy, who does our jurisprudence exams, they do some CE as well. I started looking at mainly CE Broker because it's the biggest provider of this type of service. Long before this bill was ever filed in the legislature. And that's really the antithesis, or the starting point for how we started looking at it. It arose out of that carry forward provision, where you can carry forward like 10 hours of unused credit. That's where it all started from. And I'm always also always trying to look for a way that we can automate something so that it takes it off of staff. The more I can automate, the less my folks have to worry about, and there's the less room usually for human error that there is. So that kind of factored in as well. But we didn't start looking at it because the ledge started looking at it. We were doing this before the ledge ever started taking a look at it. I don't know what's going to happen with that bill over the legislature. It was heard. Senator Blanco's version of it was heard in the Senate the other day. I don't know if you watched the hearing. I just can't tell. I can't tell. I get the impression that it's not. I don't think it's a easy sell in the legislature, just based off what I saw in the hearing.
What does the bill do? Like, I didn't.
Well, the bill just mandates all agencies use an online tracking system for their continuing education.
Okay.
Is really all it does. It doesn't name a specific particular provider. It has to be an online tracking system, and it has to be free to it can't cost anything to the agency to use it. Now, the problem with it is there is some initial setup cost for any of these, because you got to figure out how to. It's contingent upon transferring your entire license information on your entire licensee population over to whatever this online service is, so they know, oh, this person this is Lisa Merchant. She owes us 30 hours of continuing education, and then in the various categories. So we've got to get the two databases to talk to each other. And that is a difficult thing to do, because they technically, our database folks won't let anybody behind our firewalls. We have to do it through FTP file transfer protocols, FTP transfers. And that's where the money comes involved, because you got to set those API systems up to do that. So it's just, there will be a cost associated with it. It won't be much, because we're not the first agency that's ever plowed this ground. So it's already kind of been plowed for us. But anyway, that's how we are.
We like the idea of it because as we hopefully continue to grow in our licensees, you can imagine the burden on staff to go, okay, really, did you really do, you got 5, you got, they're literally having to manually tally this stuff. Where if we went to this, every licensee would basically have an account. And so you go into your account thing and you put down what your CEs are. So that all they do is just look, yeah, they got them. So it's super easy. It's also easy for you to track, because a lot of times toward the end of the year, I'm thinking, did I do everything? Am I what? And then I'm cramming it all into December, trying to get it all done. So this would also allow for licensees to have a lot better way to track where they are with their CEUs. And that was the other reason and rationale for it.
Would third parties, like would TAMFT be able to send the data? You know what I mean? Like would TAMFT or CE be able to input it?
Yeah, in fact, that's actually the preferred way to do it. Whenever you're reporting it, is you have those sponsoring organizations upload that stuff into CE Broker so that the licensee doesn't have to do it themselves. That's how the state bar does it for us. That is the preferred way to do it, but that's not the only way that these platforms allow it to happen.
Because for individuals that are doing it,
right,
it may be prohibitive. That's where the licensee may have to do it for them. For a large organization, or if say you're doing your EMDR training or something like that, it's a lot easier. So but that way we don't cut out anybody that's giving a CEU. They're still allowed to participate in it.
Dr. Elder?
So I was curious about this interesting wording. It says voluntary offerings for educational providers and licensed professionals is how the platform is funded. Does that mean that this would be an additional cost for licensees?
No, the base account is not. It's free. Where they make their money is they have concierge levels of accounts. So you can have the base level account and it will do everything you need to do in order to comply with the renewal requirement. Now I'm talking about CE Broker. I don't know about CE Zoom yet. I haven't met with them. I met with them years ago, but not recently. So the base level account will do everything you need to do to get renewed. What it doesn't do though is, and I've kind of quizzed them about this, like where they seem to make their money is like at the end of the year, people fiddle around and they don't get all their CEs. And then they're like, oh crud, I'm shy 12 hours. instead of having to go find it themselves, if you have one of this concierge level, CE Broker will find you the CEs, get it all set up for you. I mean, it's like a full blown concierge. They set it up and you just go and do it. And then they, it gets reported for you. So they take the search feature, really off your hands, I guess, if you will, get you registered. That's where they make their money, from what I can gather.
Do we have a preferred time frame for this implementation? Is it something we're thinking could be a year from now or?
Well, it would have to be, if the council did it, it would have to be a long ways. You want to have like at least I would say a year lead in, because you're going to have to do a pretty big education effort. Janine, you had asked me to talk with like ASWB at the council meeting, which I've done. I've talked to a few other, I've got one scheduled for Monday. I've talked to a few other people that use it. One of the things they have definitely recommended is to, have a pretty good lead in time so that you have a good education effort. Because if you just drop it on people cold, it's going to cause a lot of problems. But once you do a good education effort, the folks that have done it and have had like a year lead in, they're like, yeah, we've had very few problems doing it. But they all did it the right way. I haven't talked to anybody that did it the wrong way yet to tell me what it was like. Now, one thing I have done, I'll tell y'all, is I set up the same form system I used to gather public comments, Dr. Merchant, that you were looking at a minute ago. I created a little form survey, and I have blasted that out on all of the regulatory, basically all the EDs in the country for all the mental health professions. And I'm trying to survey all those jurisdictions that use it, just to kind of get their impression on, how hard was it to set up? Were there any unanticipated costs? How did your licensee population respond? What was there anything unforeseen that you didn't ask about and you wished you had? Those types of things. What I'm kind of seeing is, if you're a bigger jurisdiction like us, it hasn't been problematic. A lot of the smaller, well, there's not just a ton of survey responses, but the smaller jurisdictions that I've talked to or that have responded, they don't seem to, it hasn't been problematic, but it hasn't been all that beneficial for them either, because they're so small, they can do this stuff by hand. And so there hadn't been a lot of regulatory benefit for them. So that was something I wasn't quite expecting, but it makes sense now that I see it.
Because currently, Director Spinks, how many licensees does VHAC cover now?
A little over 80,000, like 82,000 licenses, and probably 76,000 warm bodies hold all those licenses.
Janine, is this something we sought out, or are they marketing us? Are they reaching out to us?
Actually, I believe Director Spinks began to look into it.
Okay.
Brought it to VHAC to talk about.
Okay.
And because like he said, he's only looked at this one provider, hasn't had the time yet to meet with the other one, so it's kind of waiting to bring this up till I can give, okay, this was it, and this was the rationale. But we didn't seek it out. Director Spinks did, and thinking ahead of the trend, so that when we get more licensees or people coming into the state or out, it'll be easier on staff to track them.
I like it.
I love it. So
I
this
like
will be in the concierge thing.
Yeah.
It'll be me going,
I like it.
well, what do I need to do? It's
Anything that
December
we can
15th.
centralize, anything that we can centralize and streamline
Mhm.
and make it kind of a one-stop shop for things, I think I'm for that.
I agree. Perfect. All right. Yeah.
Let me play devil's advocate for you for a minute, Dr. Barty. The one thing I was concerned about, I don't mean to monopolize this conversation, but the one thing I was concerned about when I first started, I said, I'm not concerned. I don't want to monopolize, but I'm going to.
You can do both.
At least you're transparent and honest about it.
I know. George is like, where's his off knob at? Let's turn it.
We got some good therapists, didn't we?
One thing I was worried about is it's one more freaking password and login information for people. And I'm at the point where I'm sick and tired of remembering all this crap. That part kind of bothers me a little bit. It's just one more thing to have to remember. There are ways that you can integrate it, do a single, what's it called, George, where it's single point login?
Password locker?
No, it's like where you single point login or something like,
No, it is called single login.
Emphasize logins?
Yeah, single.
I
login.
know, yeah.
There's a word missing, and there's 3 words in single.
yeah. they can set it up that way. I don't remember what it's called, but anyway, we can do that, but still, it's just one more thing you have to set up, an account you have to set up. So that part I worry about. And then you naturally worry about, I mean, the council, there was some concerns expressed about who owns the data. You know, I think like Dr. Taylor had mentioned, usually if you're getting it for free, that usually means you're the product. So that's something that I've had to dig into quite a bit. But I'll be honest with you, my concerns about that really aren't too heavy after talking with them and looking at the contracts and everything. So, because the data remains ours, it's confidential. They can't sell it or anything under the agreement. But I do get that that's a legitimate concern of people. That would be a legit concern unless you'd seen that contract.
Single sign-on.
That's it. Yeah.
So I have a question just out of curiosity, since we're talking about it. I really like the way that this would streamline, not only for licensees, but also in terms of more efficient use of staff time, is that all of this data would be here. That doesn't tell me anything about how the CEs would be audited to make sure that 50% rule was met and it met all of the other CE requirements. That seems to me that would not be able to be accomplished by an automated system that would still require staff time for those that are audited.
You're very astute.
Okay, making sure.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're right. What it will do is the system will, when Jody Elder uploads her stuff, it will say, okay, Jody Elder has uploaded 24 hours of CE, 6 hours of ethics, 3 hours of cultural competency. She's met all the requirements. Now, you could have uploaded pictures of your cat,
right,
and all that, and the system won't recognize that. And I've already been talking to them about, y'all need to get AI developed in here where it can recognize this stuff. Part of the problem is CE certificates are not standardized. And so AI is going to have a real problem with that, is what they're telling me. But anyway, that's already in the pipeline out there. They're already looking at that. You're right. But what the way we would set it up, and we've kind of roadmapped how it would work, and this will be true whether it's CE Broker, CE Zoom, or whoever, we would have what's called a hard stop. Everybody would be required to use the system. Everybody would be required to upload their continuing education certificates or what they represented to be those. They would be required to say, this is what satisfies my 24 hours of general CE, 6 hours ethics, blah, 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 all that breakdown. They could attest to that. Once they did that, the system would let them go ahead and renew. Then we would have the system generate, say, give me a 5% post-renewal audit. And that's where we would go in and go, did you upload pictures of your cat or did you actually do CE? Now, you may say, well, how's that any different than what we do now? Well, right now, we don't even verify that you took your CE unless you got audited. So the broker system or this online system would at least make you upload something. You would have to put something in there or it won't let you renew. So that's one step better than what we do. It's not perfect. It's not 100% audit. And you're not going to get that until AI, because there's just no way we can do 100% audit manpower wise.
It also keeps track of if certain things change to allow for rollover of CEUs.
Yeah.
It keeps track of that as well. So say you got 34, it'll keep track of, okay, here's my 4 I can roll into next time, next
Yep.
renewal, which I think that's super helpful as opposed to, you know,
paper.
yeah, where's my paper? I mean, do I have over that kind of stuff? Because what I took in January, I'm not remembering in December.
And it eliminates the need for you to even keep either
Exactly.
physical or digital files yourself. You know, they're already uploaded
Exactly.
into the cloud. But
What about things that we don't get a CE certificate for? So like you can get CEs for like teaching a course or giving a presentation.
Yeah.
Like, we just like click a button or we just upload a piece of paper that says I taught? Like,
it'll have to be some sort of button or selection that you make within the system that basically attests that you do it. That's how I do it for like the state bar. Whenever I'm doing something and I say self-study, I don't upload anything. I just say I did 2 hours of, and I enter the little 2 into the box, and that's it. That's really all you can do.
Yeah.
For that.
Any further? Okay.
No, so
Jump the break.
No, we're almost there.
Okay. Yes.
Yes.
Unless the chair needs a break.
The chair does need a break.
Oh, the chair needs a break, we're gonna take a break.
So we're gonna, it is 3:05 and we're gonna take a 10 or 15.
10.
Okay. We're gonna take a 10-minute break. So yeah, we'll come back at 3:15. That's 9 minutes. And get started. Okay. So we are, is there any further discussion on agenda item number 16, report from the board delegates?
Good.
Anything else there? Okay. Yes. Okay, let's move on then to agenda item number 17, report and discussion on bills being tracked in the 88th legislature. You actually ended up with like 3 documents related to that. I think Daryl provided 2, I provided 1. I guess, are there, well, Daryl, first, is there anything that you would like to say?
Well, House Bill 1167 just cleared the House today. In fact, just as y'all's meeting was started, it cleared the House. So that means it's now going over to the Senate. And 1167 is one of the bills that seeks to kind of clean up some of the licensing standards and give the board more discretion in setting those standards. And I think it has some language in there too that deals with like licensure by endorsement. I can't remember exactly what it is off the top of my head, but I know I had to go over there and be ready to testify on it. And then 4075, which is a similar bill, was heard by Human Services earlier this week or maybe late last week. Can't recall now exactly, but 1167 though has cleared the House, so it's headed over to the Senate now. And that was House Bill 3626 from the last legislature. Made it all the way through the House, made it through committee in the Senate, was on the Senate floor, and then the Senate and the House got cross-threaded with one another, and it died as a result of that. Them getting cross-threaded with one another. So this is the reboot 2.0.
Romero carried it in the House. Who wound up carrying it in the Senate?
Oh, you would ask that.
I'm sorry. It was-
No, I can't remember.
That is why he's my replacement. at
No,
I can't remember now, Dr. Scoma.
I can find out.
I think Nichols.
Nichols?
I just have a quick question about 4154 and then the Senate, it's 1282. It would be managed through HHSC. Why would that not be managed through BHEC? Are those mental health licenses we're talking about?
Yeah, I have no idea.
No.
Okay. I know what Daryl spoke to, but mainly it's because it's not within the HEC's charter. So that has to also undergo, so it could be allowed to do that. So that's why it's being managed at HSC.
Eventually the goal would be to get it over to BHEC.
I believe so.
I'm on board with that.
Yeah, that actually would be managed by us. The reciprocity part of it would be under that bill. This is one of those kind of conglomerate bills that has a bunch of different loosely related subjects in it. But the way I'm looking at it here, I think, because it says a licensing entity shall issue a license to a person who's currently licensed in another state. So that would be us that's issuing that license.
But then the incentives would be managed by HHSC.
Yeah, the other stuff, the other components in that bill are all managed by HHSC.
And that's the larger part of that. The
Yeah.
is the
Yeah,
large bulk of it. Just ours is like it's much of this big bill. So that's the only reason why it has that in there, as far as I understand. And I just want to make sure I'm getting this right, Daryl, as we're looking at different things, and anybody in the state of Texas or in the great state of Texas can always go to the Texas Legislative Register. You can look at any of these bills. You can go and watch when they're being heard. You go down to Capitol and watch being heard. So none of that is in secret. When people look at some of the bills that we're looking at out of the over 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 that get filed every year. The staff at BHEC and the licensing boards look for the ones that had to do with mental health. And we don't propose or we don't advocate for any of them. We're just tracking them so we know how does it affect us as a board. But when people see certain things like 4075 that says remove 200-hour requirements, the way that I read that bill is that it takes it out of things out of statute to be then put into rules where the board has more flexibility to meet with the changing times, what numbers, what hours, what parameters.
It's not a negative thing.
It's
Yeah.
not a
It's an
negative
empowerment.
thing, but when you look at it, it makes it look like they're doing away with all the supervision. What?
Yeah,
Not doing away with anything. It was what was proposed in the legislature. But if you go online and you read the bills, then you can see, okay, that's where they're headed. Because currently our hands get tied, all four boards, our hands get tied because sometimes things that were put in our statute that we're not allowed to change, we can't move over to rules until the Texas legislature approves that. So that's why sometimes it may look wonky. And I just wanted to make sure people understood that if they were tracking any of these bills. Thank you, Chairman.
Any additional discussion over any of these bills, questions, comments, anything? Okay, then let's move on to, gotta hang on, get back to my agenda. Let's move on to agenda item number 18, report from the board administrator. So Sarah, that's you.
Thank you. So I just wanted to check my notes. So I would ask all licensees and applicants, when you're expecting a reply from our staff, please check your spam and your junk folders, because our staff mostly use a do not reply account. Sometimes the recipient's email system filters it to those spam or those junk folders. We've gotten some reports of, I never got a response to this, and we can see that staff answered 2 or 3 times. So just wanted to check your own email systems and make sure that you're looking at the spam and junk folder if you're looking for a reply from us. Also wanted to remind people to check the status of your license. I've had an unfortunate incident with a licensee who did not know about the fingerprint process and the requirement there. Staff cannot renew the license until that fingerprint process is done and staff has received the FBI and DPS fingerprint-based reports. This person thought they had renewed their license, went an entire year before contacting staff. And consequently, the license expired. At that point, staff can no longer renew the license. And the person would have now has to apply for reinstatement of the license. So please do check your status of your license. Even if you think you've done everything right, please check the status of your license. You can check it on our website. Did want to thank Brenda Skiff for the updated consolidated rule books. They were posted on March 8th. And the most recent rules became effective on March 7th. So just wanted to, if you've downloaded those rule books in the past, please go to our website and download the new ones because they have been updated. And as Ms. Smith reported, there's a new rulemaking webpage and the new workforce survey webpage. So just if that's already been brought to your attention, so I won't repeat that too much and show that to you again. That concludes my report unless you have any other questions.
Further discussion? Okay, then let's move on to agenda item number 19, discussion and possible action regarding future priorities and activities of the board. So is there anything, members, that you would like to see the board take up?
We had a pretty exhaustive conversation earlier. We were planning committee meetings and the items for each of the committee meetings. Got a little ahead of that.
Yeah.
It was a good conversation.
Okay.
Just for clarity, our 2 board members, they will continue unless there's a replacement by July. So
Yes, it's I hear, I don't know, because I've not ever gone through this before, but it's my understanding that they probably will not make appointments until after the legislative session is over. But I don't know, I don't know if there'll be a backlog and it'll take time, or, I don't know, I have no idea. So yes, it's possible that they could be reappointed before the June meeting, but I know that like when I came onto the board, the person who had been in this 2 years expired, so they had actually been serving on the board for 2 years in an expired seat. And so I have no idea how long it will,
I've seen it a little bit longer. Also.
so.
We're never letting you.
Welcome to the hotel. We, Madam Chair, I have been in contact with the Governor's Appointment Office. In fact, I spoke with the Assistant Director. I was the chaplain of the day in February of this year in Austin. And I had the honor of serving in the Texas Senate as a chaplain of the day. And thank you. And so I had an appointment that I made with the Assistant Director. And they're trying to work assiduously. They don't want us to resign. The governor's asked us not to resign until a replacement is made. As you've said and pointed out, it'll probably be June, July. They may expect a special session because they've got a lot. Board Member Smith has said 7,500 bills have been filed. Probably 1,000 of those will go to calendar committee, maybe. And then after that, then if it makes it out of calendar, then it's going to be in the Senate, on the Senate floor, and then to the Senate. So we'll see. So hopefully it will be moving pretty quickly. That is what I know.
Never learned about that. School as well.
No, sir. And that was and to some people's comments, that was in person. All of those discussions were in person.
Okay, then we'll move on to agenda item number 20, which is public comment. Ms. Fassel, do you mind if we start with public comment in person and then we can move to public comment on Zoom?
Sure.
Do we have any public comment from our public? If you would like to make a public comment, you will have to come to the front and speak to the microphone. No intimidation, no.
And I'll just remind everyone that for those that are attending by computer, use the raised hand feature to indicate you'd like to make a public comment. After we finish with those who are attending in person, we'll go on to those who are attending by computer, and then we'll move on to those who are attending by telephone. If you called in, then I'll just unmute you and ask if you have public comment. If you don't, then just say you don't, and I'll move on to the next one. I just want to remind everyone, public comment is not intended for a discussion or a question and answer session with the board. Additionally, when making public comment, please identify yourself and whether you are speaking individually or on behalf of an organization. All public comment is limited to 3 minutes unless otherwise directed by the presiding officer. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, we have public comment. Okay, sorry.
We have a public. First time in 3 years.
I know, okay.
Hello, my name is Angela Bowles. I'm a licensed professional counselor supervisor from the great state of Texas. And I would just like to thank you all for the opportunity to meet in person. And I hope that the other boards will soon be meeting in person too. It's great to hear the conversations and to be able to interact with you all on a personal level and feel connected, because we are a field that is relationally based and we are connected. So I think this definitely makes a difference in our performance and how we all work together to protect the people of the great state of Texas.
Here,
Good year.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Okay, then we are ready to go to the Zoom callers.
I see 2 individuals are attending by computer and neither hand is raised. And I see no one attending by telephone. So I believe that ends the public comment.
Okay, and that means that we get to move on to agenda item number 21, announcements and comments not requiring board action. One, I guess, comment that I have, is I'm just so grateful for this university, for our,
Very good.
been incredibly gracious, the water, the coffee, the snackies, the signs, y'all letting us know where to come, just all of it has been fantastic. So just thank you all for making this happen. Okay. Any other announcements or comments, anything else that we need to?
Do we have a date set for another town hall or lunch? Do we have a date set? for
Do
the next
y'all want to
one?
go ahead and set one? Do y'all want to set one for July?
I'm kind of thinking maybe September, October, like after everybody's back in school.
Okay.
What do you guys think?
Like the lunch.
Yeah,
Well, the only thing, the only reason, when we meet again, when's our next board meeting? July
uh-huh.
22nd. Do we want to try to solicit feedback about? Well, no, maybe
Well,
not.
I think we gotta wait until the legislative session is over.
Right.
We'll know if we have anything new. Then we can meet and kind of talk about that.
And then we can solicit from
Yeah.
that. Okay, yeah, let's do September.
Our last one was on a Friday. That's always a
Mhm.
good day. I think the fourth might be like first, second, third, fourth. Is that Labor Day? You don't want to do it then?
I don't.
No.
Labor Day is the 4th, so you're right. So
Yeah.
the first,
So it
we
would
might
be
not be
like
good.
We need to go like the 15th.
8:15.
I cannot do the 15th or the 29th, so I would need to do either the 8th or the 22nd. Yeah, either the 8th or the 22nd.
I think I would push for the 22nd.
Is that going to interfere with CLEAR or AMFTRB?
No, because usually I don't leave for AMFTRB until like either Sunday or Monday.
I knew it happens in September sometimes.
And then I'll be right before, well, depending on how our calendar changes. Right now, our September board meeting is set for, I think, the 29th.
The
But again-
26th and 27th is AMFTRB. You're right. Okay.
We can do the 22nd. Lunch hour, noon,
Please. I just think if there are any changes that are made, it might be a good time to set up to be able to go over those.
right?
Well, and it's also right before our October meeting, so if we do the kind of town hall approach where we're seeking input, that gives us time to consider it for our October agenda.
Did you hear that, Sarah?
Yes.
Okay, any other announcements or comments? Okay, well then, in that case, we are moving on to adjournment, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
I believe we're adjourned, Madam Chair.
A second.
Okay, then we adjourn at 3:40 PM.
Thank you, staff.
As always.
Yes.
Thank you, staff. Thank you
Very
all.
well. We gotta color code these. This is making my